Good morning, everybody. It's day 60 of my vlog. Today is part 3 on fear. We'll be looking at Psalm 3, verses 1 through 8, the whole psalm. Um, it was one of those times where David probably felt absolutely trapped and hopeless, like there was no way out. Um, there are times when the fear we have is so great that it cripples us. We freeze up. There's nothing we can do. We're passive. We're submissive to the fear. And it's hard to remember at those times that fear is always caused by sin. Fear itself is not a sin, but fear is always caused by sin in one way or another. Not just my sin, but maybe somebody else's sin. It is usually a little bit of both, to be honest with you. So David, getting later on in his years of his life in Psalm 3, had failed to properly lead his family in the matter of Amnon, his son, raping his sister Tamar. That's in 2 Samuel 13. Absalom, another son of David, he waits for dad to do something, gets mad, kills Amnon, and David fails to deal with that. David has had two failures here. They are both sin on his part. And Absalom grows to despise David. And he conspires to take the throne from him, to overthrow David. And Psalm 3 is written while he's dealing with this, while he is dealing with his fear of Absalom. And you have to think about this. David's failures with a son raping a daughter probably even go back to how well he dealt with his failures, his sin with Bathsheba. God had forgiven him, but had David gotten over it? And I don't believe so. It came back to haunt him in his conscience over and over again. So David writes Psalm 3 while he's dealing with his fear of Absalom. He declares that he cannot remove his fear because he cannot deal with his sin. I mean, many there be that say of me, I'm in trouble. And Absalom's sin that made David naked and vulnerable, his own guilt that paralyzed him, he can't deal with that either. I mean, he feels like a hypocrite in some ways, I'm sure. I actually think this goes all the way back to the guilt of his adultery and murder with Bathsheba. He knew God had forgiven him, but it still crippled him concerning rape and murder in his own family. I know the same struggle of my sins, how hard it is to deal with a sin in myself. I mean, in somebody else that's a sin of my own. Or even just understanding that in many ways their sin may be different, but it's no different than my own. And my struggles are no different than their struggles. So David, feeling overwhelmed, writes in verse 1, how are they increased that trouble me? Many are they that rise up against me. And that's how it feels when sin is pursuing. David then turns to God and he cries out to God, and God hears him in verses 3 and 4. Only God can remove the fear that by covering the sin that underlies the fear. David goes to the right place. And I know personally, when I'm struggling with that kind of fear, I don't sleep well. And it's interesting, neither did David. Verse 5 is one of my favorite verses in the Bible. David says, I turned to God, I laid me down and slept. The Lord sustained me. What an incredible statement. The fear, the peace seems to be instantaneous. Um, Giving God your fear lets you sleep. Proverbs 29:25 was the last vlog on part 2. Fear of man brings a snare, but whoso puts his trust in the Lord shall be safe. Well, David's feeling safe. And then verse 6, David says, I will not be afraid. It's a proclamation and a declaration, and it's an amazing statement. And he says in verse 8, salvation belongs to the Lord. Now, this is maybe the most important part of this. It is easy for people to say, give it to the Lord. Don't be afraid. But we must remember that David has been facing fear by trying to give it to the Lord for over 50 years now. A bear, a lion, Goliath, Saul, just nonstop. And if you look back at the story, he didn't always just give it to the Lord and go to sleep. He got to this place in verse 5 of I laid me down and slept. He got there after a long time of learning in the school of fear. And you and I will be no different. We won't just give it to the Lord and lay ourselves down and sleep quickly or easily. But are you willing to try to repeatedly bring your fear to the Lord for Him to cover, to deal with the sin, to protect you, and take your fear away? May God bless you.